The rifle had a name. Harper Kincaid had been cleaning it for the third time that morning when Senior Chief Marcus Stone walked past without looking at her. The M40A6 lay across her lap like a sleeping predator, all cold precision and patient violence. She ran the bore snake through the barrel one more time, watching the first light of dawn creep across the armory floor. The weapon had a history longer than her career. Longer than her life if she counted the years it had spent in other hands, other wars, other moments when everything hung on a single trigger pull. Engraved on the stock just above where her cheek would rest, GB, Fallujah, 2004. Garrett Bishop, the man who had carried this rifle through 3 wars, the man who had been there when her father died. Harper set down the cleaning rod and lifted Reckoning to her shoulder. Through the scope, she tracked Stone's retreating figure across the armory. Watched the way he moved with the confidence of a man who had never questioned his own judgment. 19 years in the teams. Enough time to become legend or liability, and sometimes the difference was thinner than scope glass. She lowered the rifle and resumed cleaning. The motion was meditation. Pull the snake through, inspect for fouling, repeat. Each pass a prayer to the gods of precision. Each stroke a promise that when the moment came, when everything compressed down to wind and distance, and one chance Reckoning would speak true. Fort Harrison hummed with pre-mission energy. Montana winter pressed against the windows, turning the world outside into shades of white and gray. Inside, operators moved through their rituals, checking weapons, reviewing maps, making the small calculations that separated those who came home from those who came home in boxes. Harper thought about her father. She always did before missions. Captain William Kincaid, United States Marine Corps. Killed in action, Fallujah, November 2004. She had been 12 years old enough to understand death, but young enough to believe in heroes. Her father had been both. The memory rose unbidden. Bishop arriving at their house 3 weeks after the funeral. Still in uniform, eyes carrying something heavy that had nothing to do with jet lag. He had knelt in front of her. This stranger was silver, starting at his temples and hands that trembled slightly when he held them still. Your father was the best Marine I ever provided overwatch for, Bishop had said. He saved 6 men before the IED took him. That's legacy, Harper, protecting others like he did. She had asked him then, voice small, will you teach me to shoot like you? Bishop's answer had been careful. When you're ready, I'll teach you everything. 12 years later, she had graduated from sniper school, top of her class, 240 candidates. She had outshot 239 of them. Bishop had been there, waiting with a rifle case that looked older than both of them. This was in Fallujah when your father fell, he had said, opening the case to reveal Reckoning. I carried it out. Now you carry it forward. Make every shot count for him. The rifle had passed from his hands to hers like a torch in darkness. Like a promise that some things endured beyond death, beyond grief, beyond the mathematics of loss that said fathers didn't come home and daughters grew up learning to fill the empty spaces with fury and discipline. 41 confirmed kills since then. 41 times Reckoning had spoken for her. 41 human beings who had made the terminal mistake of appearing in her crosshairs when circumstances demanded their removal from the equation. She didn't keep trophies, didn't inflate her numbers. The kills were just data points in a larger calculation about duty and necessity and the cold algebra of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Stone's voice cut through her meditation. Briefing in 5, Tactical Operations Center. He still didn't look at her, just delivered the message to the air beside her head and moved on. Harper watched him go, then slid Reckoning into its drag bag with movements that had become muscle memory. 40 pounds of rifle scope, bipod, and suppressor. 40 pounds of judgment and consequence. The Tactical Operations Center smelled like coffee and tension. 6 operators clustered around the map table. Stone stood at the head, his finger tracing routes through satellite imagery of the Bitterroot Mountains. Gentlemen, he said, and Harper noted the word choice with the same clinical detachment she used to note wind direction. Intelligence indicates a cartel militia operation in the Bitterroot Wilderness sector. Drug and human trafficking, 15 to 20 armed smugglers utilizing the northern route toward the Canadian border. The map showed a maze of canyons and ridgelines, 50,000 acres of terrain that swallowed people whole, the kind of wilderness where bodies went unfound until spring thaw, if ever. Our mission, Stone continued, is reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Eyes on the operation, confirm numbers, identify leadership, establish patterns for a larger strike package. Petty Officer Grayson Hayes, the team medic, leaned forward. His Minnesota farm boy face carried the weathered calm of someone who had seen enough trauma to know that panic solved nothing. Expected resistance level. Intel suggests minimal training. Cartel militia, not professional soldiers. We maintain distance, observe extract before contact. Harper studied the map. Something itched at the back of her mind. The heat signatures in the satellite imagery. The distribution of thermal contacts. She pulled up the raw intelligence feed on her tablet, comparing it to Stone's briefing slides. The numbers didn't match. Stone's brief showed 15 to 20 contacts. The raw satellite data showed 35 to 40 distinct heat signatures distributed in patterns that suggested coordination rather than random movement. She raised her hand. Stone's eyes slid past her to the wall behind her head. "Chief Kincaid," he said, "questions. The satellite thermals show significantly higher numbers than briefed. I count 35 to 40 distinct signatures, potentially more depending on terrain masking. Recommend we adjust force posture accordingly." Stone's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped beneath his eye. Thermal signatures in mountain terrain are notoriously unreliable. Could be wildlife. Could be civilian campers. Intelligence has been verified through multiple sources. With respect, Senior Chief, the distribution pattern suggests intelligence is solid. Stone's voice carried the weight of 19 years. We proceed as briefed. Harper held his gaze for 3 seconds, long enough to make her point, short enough to avoid direct insubordination. Then she nodded and looked back at the map. Stone continued the briefing as if the exchange hadn't occurred. Insertion at 0600 via helicopter. 12-kilometer foot patrol to the observation point. Chief Kincaid, you'll establish overwatch position on the eastern ridge. His finger stabbed at a point on the map, 800 meters from the main observation point. Provide long-range security until the team completes reconnaissance and returns for extraction. 800 meters. Harper's training, Bishop's doctrine, every manual she had ever studied, said sniper teams operated within 400 meters of supported elements. Close enough to provide precision fire. Close enough to communicate. Close enough to see what needed seeing and do what needed doing. 800 meters in broken terrain meant isolation. Meant she would be a spectator instead of a participant. Meant that if things went wrong, she would watch her team die through a scope and there would be nothing she could do about it. Senior Chief, she said carefully, standard protocols call for sniper rifle team integration within 400 meters of supported elements. 800 meters in canyon terrain limits effectiveness and response capability. Stone turned to face her fully for the first time that morning. His eyes were the color of winter ice. "Chief Kincaid, I'm aware of protocols. I'm also aware that this terrain requires adaptation. You will establish position at the designated point and maintain overwatch until we return. Is that clear?" The question was a trap. Answering meant accepting the obvious isolation. Not answering meant insubordination. Harper chose the path that kept her in the mission. "Clear, Senior Chief?" The briefing continued for another 20 minutes. Extraction coordinates. Emergency frequencies. Contingency plans that assumed everything would go according to plan, which meant they weren't really contingency plans at all. When Stone dismissed the team, Harper gathered her gear and walked into the pale Montana morning. The sun hadn't cleared the mountains yet. The world existed in shades of blue and gray, waiting for light that felt very far away. She found Bishop in the advisor quarters, a converted barracks room that smelled like gun oil and old coffee. He was cleaning an M40 rifle, the weapon system that had preceded reckoning. 67 years old and still moving like a man who expected the next firefight to start any second. Silver haircut, military short, face weathered like Badlands stone. Hands steady despite the decades and the wars and the things those hands had done in the service of keeping other people breathing. He looked up when Harper entered, didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. "Stone's briefing went well, I take it." Harper set Reckoning's case on the desk. "He's isolating me, 800 meters from the team, outside effective support range." Bishop nodded slowly. He'd heard this song before, sung by different voices in different wars, but the melody never changed. "Marcus Stone is a good operator. But he's also a man who buried his daughter 3 years ago. Meredith, Air Force pilot, F-18, training accident. Ejection seat parameters hadn't been updated for smaller frames. She was 98 pounds. The ejection killed her before the plane even hit the ground. Harper closed her eyes, felt the shape of Stone's hatred settle into place like a puzzle piece she should have recognized earlier. He sees her in every woman who wears the uniform, Bishop continued, sees the system that killed her operating again, sees failure waiting to repeat itself. It makes him careful in ways that look like wisdom, but are really just fear-wearing rank. What do I do? Bishop set down his cleaning rod. You do the mission, you hold the ridge, and when the moment comes, and it will come, Harper, these things always do you trust yourself. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the first sunlight touched the mountain peaks, turning snow to gold. 1991, Desert Storm. I was a young fool with a rifle and orders to provide overwatch for a Marine patrol moving through a rocky desert. My spotter and I set up on a ridge, 600 meters from the patrol, close enough to see, too far to matter if things went bad. Bishop's reflection in the window looked older than the man standing there. They walked into an ambush. Republican Guard, 30 soldiers with automatic weapons and ARPs. My spotter said to hold position, said the patrol would break contact, said our job was intelligence, not engagement. What did you do? I started shooting. 12 targets in 90 seconds. My spotter kept saying I was violating orders, kept saying there would be consequences. He was right about that. There were consequences. What happened? The patrol survived. I got a reprimand for unauthorized engagement and a commendation for extraordinary valor. Both pieces of paper went in the same file and meant exactly nothing. Bishop turned from the window. What mattered was that 6 Marines went home to their families because I chose action over obedience. Harper absorbed this. Stone will court-martial me if I disobey. Maybe, but you'll be alive to face the charges. The alternative is watching good men die while you follow orders that stopped making sense the moment bullets started flying. He picked up a small notebook from his desk. Old leather-bound pages, yellow with age. 1993, Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down. You know that story. Everyone knows that story. You know the public story. Here's the one they don't tell. Bishop opened the notebook to a page marked with a faded ribbon. I was providing overwatch when the first helicopter went down. Saw it happen. Saw the Rangers and Delta operators converge on the crash site. Saw the Somali militia massing for assault. He ran his finger down a list of numbers. Ranges, wind speeds, kill confirmations. Command said hold position, said extract was coming, said don't engage unless directly threatened. I counted 32 militia fighters moving to flank our men. Counted the seconds until they would be in position to execute every American in that kill zone. You shot. 19 targets until my ammunition ran dry, until the flanking movement collapsed and our men had time to establish a perimeter. Bishop closed the notebook. Command never mentioned it in the after-action report. Never court-martialed me. Never commended me. The kills just disappeared into the chaos of that day. He held Harper's eyes. The point isn't recognition. The point is that when you can see what needs doing and you have the skill to do it, hesitation becomes its own kind of cowardice. Your father understood that. It's why he died saving others instead of saving himself. Harper felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, not quite courage either. Something harder to name. How do you know when the moment comes? You'll know, your training will know, reckoning will know. Bishop lifted the rifle case and set it in her hands like a benediction. This weapon has ended 168 lives across 30 years. Every shot was necessary. That's the legacy you carry. Not the weight of the rifle. The weight of knowing when to pull the trigger. The helicopter insertion went smooth. Too smooth. Harper felt it in her bones as the Black Hawk settled into the mountain clearing. That animal awareness that said predators were watching. That whispered of traps waiting to spring. The team moved out in standard patrol formation. Grayson Hayes on point reading terrain like a farmer reads weather. Tyler Brennan at secondary, young and eager and competent in the way of operators who haven't learned yet that competence wasn't armor. Jack Morrison in the middle, his mind probably on his pregnant wife back home 7 months, along with a girl they were going to name after her grandmother. Marcus Stone moved with the fluid economy of a man who had logged 10,000 kilometers of combat patrol, and somewhere behind him, Harper Kincaid watching the forest close around them like a throat swallowing. The Bitterroot Wilderness in January was a study in monochrome, pine trees heavy with snow, gray rock thrusting through white drifts, the kind of cold that made breathing hurt and turned moisture into ice crystals that hung in the air like suspended time. They moved in silence, hand signals and practiced coordination. 6 hours into the patrol, Harper spotted the first sign, a broken pine branch at knee height. The exposed wood still pale and fresh. Someone had passed this way recently. Someone trying to move quietly but leaving evidence anyway because the forest remembered everything. She keyed her radio, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. Overwatch to lead, signs of recent passage, single file movement, northbound, less than 6 hours old. Stone's response came flat and immediate. Noted, continue mission. Senior Chief, the sign suggests we're being paralleled. Recommend we adjust route to western approach. Better terrain, less predictable. 3 seconds of silence. Harper counted them. 1, 2, 3. Long enough to know Stone was weighing her assessment against his pride. Long enough to know which one would win. Negative overwatch. Maintain current heading. Out. Grayson caught her eye from his position ahead. His face asked the question his voice couldn't. She answered with a small shake of her head. Not now, not here, but she began planning anyway. Because her grandfather, her father's father, a man who had crawled through Louisiana swamps in darkness, hunting things with teeth, had taught her something that translated across terrain and decades. When the gators circle, you don't wait for them to choose their moment. You choose yours. The eastern ridge came into view at 1400 hours. Stone signaled the halt with a raised fist. The team melted into the tree line, becoming part of shadow and snow. Harper moved forward at his gesture, studying the position he had selected for her. The ridge offered magnificent sight lines, 800 meters of clear elevation above the canyon floor. Fields of fire that swept across the entire valley, a sniper's dream for observation, a sniper's nightmare for support. Chief Kincaid, Stone said, his voice carrying the formal distance of a man issuing orders he knew were wrong. Establish overwatch here. The team will proceed to the observation point in the canyon and return before nightfall. Maintain radio contact. Engage only if directly threatened. Harper studied the terrain. The ridge position isolated her from the team. Put vertical and horizontal distance between her and the people she was supposed to protect. Limited her response options to watching through glass while better men than her bled out on rocks below. Senior Chief, standard protocol. I'm aware of protocol. Stone's voice carried an edge now, sharp enough to draw blood. I'm also aware that this terrain requires adaptation. You will hold this position until we return. Clear. The words sat in her throat like a stone. She looked at the canyon below, at the shadows gathering between the trees, at the silence that felt less like peace and more like patience. Clear, Senior Chief. The team moved out. Tyler was the last to pass, his hand brushing her shoulder in a gesture that said what his voice couldn't. Stay safe, we'll be back. Don't worry. She wanted to tell him that worry was just intelligence, looking at probabilities. Wanted to say that every nerve in her body was screaming warnings. Wanted to grab Stone and shake him until his pride cracked and let reality in. Instead, she watched them descend into the canyon until even their sounds faded into nothing. Alone. Harper settled into position with the methodical precision of ritual. Reckoning's bipod on a flat granite slab. Range card created marking distances to key terrain features. 600 meters to that lightning-struck pine. 750 to the boulder cluster. 820 to the far canyon wall. Wind flags observed. Pine branches swaying in the thermal currents that rose from the canyon floor. Approximately 6 miles per hour, quartering left to right. She adjusted the windage turret 2 clicks, accounting for the drift that would push a bullet off course at distance. Temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Elevation 7,200 feet above sea level. Air density calculations made and noted. Every variable that could affect a bullet's flight path cataloged and compensated for. Then came the hardest part. The waiting. 11 hours. That's how long Harper remained motionless on that ridge. 11 hours of becoming stone, becoming snow, becoming nothing but eyes and awareness stretched across distance. The cold worked its way through her layers, through the insulated jacket and the thermal underlayer, and the skin itself settling into bones like an old friend. Her body wanted to shiver, wanted to move, wanted to generate heat through motion. She denied it. Motion was detection. Detection was death. A scorpion crawled across her boot at hour 3. She watched it traverse the leather tail curled and ready, searching for warmth or prey or whatever drove scorpions to movement. It found neither on her and continued on its way. The sun tracked across the sky above the canyon. Light shifted from noon bright to afternoon gold to the long shadows of approaching evening. In the valley below her, team moved towards something they couldn't see, and Harper waited. Patience wasn't passive. Bishop had taught her that. Her grandfather had shown her in the swamps. Patience was active engagement stretched across time. Patience was making yourself ready for the moment before you knew what moment you were waiting for. She thought about her father. Tried not to, but the thoughts came anyway. Captain William Kincaid leading a patrol through Fallujah streets. Bishop providing overwatch from a rooftop 3 blocks away. The IED buried in rubble that sensors couldn't detect and experience couldn't predict. Bishop had seen it happen through his scope, watched the flash, watched the patrol disappear in smoke and debris, watched Harper's father try to crawl toward his wounded men, even as his own life bled out into Iraqi dust. He had killed 4 insurgents who tried to finish the wounded Americans, killed them with the rifle now resting under Harper's cheek, killed them with a precision that said some deaths were justified and some were necessary, and the difference mattered even when the outcome looked the same. But he couldn't save her father, could only bear witness, could only carry out the rifle and the story, and the guilt that came from being alive when better men weren't. The sun touched the western ridgeline at 1730 hours, and then the first shot cracked across the canyon like breaking bone. Harper's scope found the muzzle flash before the echo faded. Then another. Then the unmistakable thunder of an ambush sprung with professional timing and amateur enthusiasm. She counted the shooters through her scope. 14 on the eastern ridge, 11 on the western. 25 total, maybe more, arranged in a horseshoe that turned the canyon floor into a kill box with her team at the center. Automatic weapons fire stitched the air. RPGs streaked across the valley like falling stars in reverse. She could hear the rhythm of the firefight even at 800 meters. The desperate staccato of her team returning fire. The heavier hammer of enemy weapons designed to overwhelm through volume rather than precision. Harper's hand found Reckoning's bolt, chambered around with a sound like bone settling. The crosshairs settled on the eastern ridge, on the shooters who were advancing now tightening the noose. She keyed her radio, kept her voice calm despite the adrenaline trying to make it shake. Overwatch to lead. I have eyes on enemy positions. 25 confirmed hostiles in coordinated ambush. Request permission to engage. Static answered her. Then Stone's voice, breathless and strained with the sound of a man running out of options. Negative overwatch. We are maneuvering to break contact. Hold position. Senior Chief, you are pinned. I can suppress the eastern flank. Create an opening for withdrawal. I said negative. The words came sharp, almost panicked. That is a direct order. Hold your position. The radio went dead. Harper lifted her eye from the scope and stared at the receiver. Below, the gunfire intensified. She could hear the distinctive rhythm of American weapons being answered by heavier enemy fire. The sound told the story Stone's words tried to hide. They weren't maneuvering, they weren't breaking contact. They were dying. She thought about regulations, about chain of command, about 2 centuries of military doctrine that said orders were orders and disobedience was the crack that let chaos in. She thought about Bishop in the desert, Bishop in Mogadishu, Bishop choosing action over obedience and living with the consequences. She thought about her father dying in the street while trying to save his men. Through the scope, she watched an RPG gunner take position, watched him settle the weapon on his shoulder, watched him track toward where Grayson Hayes was pinned behind inadequate cover. 4 seconds to acquire target, 3 seconds to aim, 2 seconds to fire. Harper made her choice. Forgive me, Dad, she whispered. Forgive me, Colonel. Reckoning spoke. The sound was subsonic precision, a crack that split the air and carried across 800 meters like judgment rendered. The RPG gunner dropped before his finger found the trigger. The weapon tumbled from his hands unfired, harmless. Harper worked the bolt. The smooth action of metal against metal. The brass ejected in a golden arc. She chambered another round and found her next target. Range 650 meters. Wind 6 miles per hour, quartering left. Temperature 41 degrees. Elevation 7,200 feet. The mathematics of death distilled to variables and corrections. She exhaled slowly, felt her heartbeat in her fingertips. The crosshairs settled on the squad leader, the man whose body language marked him as someone giving orders, someone coordinating the killing. Her finger took up slack on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure, then 4, then 6. Reckoning spoke again. The squad leader folded in on himself like a puppet with cut strings, dropped without sound, without ceremony. Just the simple transition from alive to dead that happened in the space between heartbeats. Third shot. Machine gunner establishing position. Range 820 meters. Wind increasing as thermals rose from the canyon. Adjust elevation 11.7 mils. Adjust windage 0.5 mils right. The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The machine gunner slumped over his weapon. 4 targets in 90 seconds. The eastern flank stuttered, stopped advancing, began looking for threats they couldn't locate. Her radio exploded with voices. Who the hell is shooting? That was Tyler, young and confused and still alive, because Harper had made a choice. Overwatch, Harper replied, her voice carrying the same calm she used for range practice. Eastern flank suppressed. Recommend you break west. I will cover your movement. A pause, then Stone's voice, carrying something between fury and disbelief and the beginning of understanding. I ordered you to hold position. I am holding position, Senior Chief. I'm also engaging targets of opportunity. Harper tracked another enemy fighter through her scope. With respect, you can court-martial me later if we survive. She didn't wait for his response. Through the scope, she saw movement on the western flank. Enemy fighters repositioning, trying to locate the sniper who had just shattered their ambush. 5th shot, moving target. Range 580 meters. Lead the movement, account for the speed. The geometry of interception calculated in the half-second before the trigger broke. The runner stumbled. Pitch forward. Did not rise. 5 confirmed. 35 rounds remaining. The eastern flank was collapsing now. Fighters scattering to cover. Their coordinated assault dissolving into chaos as they searched for a threat they couldn't see and couldn't fight. Below, her team began to move. She watched them through the scope covering their withdrawal with the patient attention of a shepherd watching over wolves. Grayson supporting Tyler, half carrying him through the brush. Stone moving at the rear, his rifle up his movements, sharp with the energy of a man who had expected to die and found himself still breathing. They weren't clear yet. The enemy would regroup. But for now, in this moment, her team was alive, because she had chosen disobedience over death. Harper allowed herself one breath. Then she began to pack her position. The ridge was compromised. The enemy knew her general location. It wouldn't take them long to send hunters up the slope. She broke down her hide with practiced efficiency. Reckoning across her backpack secured every trace of her presence erased within 60 seconds. Then she was moving, slipping through the forest like a ghost, like her call sign suggested. Kincaid the silent, Kincaid the patient, Kincaid who killed from distance and disappeared before the bodies cooled. The forest closed around her. The same forest that had felt like a prison 2 hours ago now felt like home, like the Louisiana bayou where her grandfather had taught her to disappear into cypress shadows. She descended from the ridge at an angle, northwest, toward the route her team would have to take to reach the rally point, moving by instinct and training, feet finding quiet ground, body flowing around obstacles that would betray lesser operators. Every sense extended outward, reading the forest for threats. She had traveled perhaps 500 meters when she heard them. Voices ahead, speaking English with accents that placed them somewhere east of the Atlantic, somewhere cold, somewhere that trained soldiers instead of militia. Harper froze, lowered herself into the undergrowth with movements measured in millimeters. Through the brush, she counted them. 8 fighters, moving in patrol formation, weapons clean, movements disciplined. These weren't the amateur smugglers from the ambush. These were professionals, and they were heading toward the rally point, the only place her team could go. One of them paused barely 10 feet from her position, his eyes scanning the shadows. She didn't breathe, didn't blink, became nothing but another shadow among thousands. The moment stretched like wire under tension. Then the soldier moved on, following his companions toward whatever trap they were setting. Harper waited until their sounds faded completely before she allowed herself to breathe again. Her mind raced through implications. This wasn't a random militia ambush. This was a coordinated operation, multiple elements. Blocking forces positioned to cut off retreat. Her team was walking into something bigger than intelligence had suggested, bigger than Stone had prepared for, bigger than 5 operators in 41 rounds could handle alone. She rose from the forest floor and began to move again. Faster now, racing the enemy towards a confrontation that would demand everything she had, and possibly more. The forest had a heartbeat. Harper felt it in the spaces between her own pulse, the way the wilderness breathed around those who moved through it. Right now, that rhythm was wrong. Too quiet in some places, too loud in others, the cadence of predators circling prey. Above the trees, she heard the distant thump of rotor blades. Helicopter. Searching. The enemy had air support, had coordination, had resources that suggested this operation was more than simple smuggling. She thought about the thermal signatures she had seen in the satellite imagery. 35 to 40 contacts. She had been right. Stone had been wrong. And 5 good men were now paying the price for pride wearing rank. Through her radio earpiece, she heard Stone's voice, tight with stress but still functional, still leading. Rally Point Bravo, 2 kilometers north. Move with purpose. Rally Point Bravo. Harper knew it from the briefing. A clearing near a frozen creek. Good visibility, decent cover, and according to the patrol she had just avoided, probably surrounded by now. She altered her course, angling to intercept her team before they walked into the next kill zone, moving through the forest like water finding its path downhill. Each step chosen for silence, each pause calibrated to the sounds around her. Her radio crackled, not the team frequency, the captured enemy radio she had heard earlier now transmitting in the open. A voice, male, accented, speaking English with the careful precision of someone for whom it was a second language. The American sniper, the woman from the ridge, find her, kill her. A pause, then the voice continued, and Harper felt ice crystallize in her chest. But I want her alive first. I want her to know that Russian training is superior to American. I want her to understand this before she dies. Russian, not cartel militia, not amateur smugglers, Spetsnaz, or former Spetsnaz, professional Russian military operating on American soil. The voice continued. The woman killed 5 of ours. This is personal now. Volkov will have her head. Volkov. The name meant wolf in Russian, appropriate for a hunter, for someone who saw killing as sport rather than necessity. Harper's jaw tightened. She had been in firefights before, had faced enemy forces that outnumbered and outgunned her, but this was different. This was someone making it personal. Someone who would allocate resources and attention specifically to hunting her. She checked her ammunition. 35 rounds for reckoning, 15 for her sidearm, 50 total rounds against forces that were hunting her with intent and expertise. The mathematics were impossible. The mission was hopeless. Every tactical principle she had ever learned said to find a hide position and wait for rescue. But her team didn't know what was waiting for them. Didn't know about the blocking forces or the Russian mercenaries or the man called Volkov who was making this hunt personal. Harper quickened her pace. The forest blurred around her, pine branches whipping past, snow crunching under boots that no longer bothered with silence because speed mattered more. She thought about Bishop's words, about choosing action over obedience, about knowing when to pull the trigger. She thought about her father bleeding out in Fallujah dust. She thought about Tyler Brennan's hand on her shoulder. Grayson's quiet competence. Stone's stubborn pride that was really fear of losing another daughter. Morrison's unborn child who deserved to know her father. The rifle across her back felt heavier with each step. 168 confirmed kills. Soon to be more. Had to be more. Because the alternative was watching good men die while she hid in the forest and waited for rescue, that might never come. Harper broke from the tree line into the clearing where her team was supposed to gather, and found Grayson Hayes crouched behind a fallen log rifle trained on her approach finger, resting on the trigger guard until he recognized her silhouette. "Jesus, Harp," he breathed, lowering his weapon. "We thought you were dead." She crossed the clearing in quick movements, slid into position beside the medic. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the blood staining his sleeve from a wound he hadn't bothered to treat yet. Beyond him, Tyler lay against the log, conscious but pale, bandage wrapped around his thigh where shrapnel had found him. His rifle was still in his hands, though, still ready, still in the fight. "Where's Stone?" Harper asked. Grayson gestured with his chin. 50 meters north with Morrison, establishing perimeter. The others, the medic's expression flickered, went carefully blank in the way of people delivering bad news. "We lost 2 in the initial ambush. RPG caught them before they could reach cover." Harper absorbed the information. 2 dead, 1 critical. Out of 8 operators who had inserted that morning, only 5 remained. And between them and extraction stood an enemy force that outnumbered them 8-1. Harper pulled out the enemy radio. "They know about me, about the sniper on the ridge. They're hunting me specifically now." "Who is Russians? Professional contractors, led by someone called Volkov." She met his eyes. "This isn't a cartel operation, Gray. This is something bigger, something coordinated." Footsteps approached from the north. Stone appeared from the tree line, Morrison leaning heavily against him. The wounded operator's face was gray beneath the dirt and camouflage paint. His breathing came in shallow gasps that whistled wetly through damaged lungs. Stone's eyes found Harper, held her gaze for a long moment. She waited for the anger, for the accusations, for the fury of a senior chief whose direct orders had been disobeyed in combat. Instead, Stone carefully lowered Morrison to the ground and spoke 2 words. "Show me." Harper spread the enemy radio and the intelligence imagery on the forest floor, pointed out the discrepancies, the thermal signatures, the coordinated blocking positions. Stone studied the data in silence. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Finally, he looked up. "You were right. The intel was wrong." He paused. "I was wrong." The admission hung in the frozen air between them. "What's your assessment, Chief Kincaid?" Harper pulled out her map, traced a route with her finger. "Rally Point Bravo is compromised. They're waiting for us there. But there's an old mining camp 4 kilometers northwest. Copper Ridge. Abandoned since the 1880s, but the stone foundations are still standing. Defensible terrain, alternate extraction point on the ridge above." Stone studied the route, the distance, the terrain they would have to cross in darkness with 2 wounded operators and an enemy force actively hunting them. "It's a hard movement," he said. "Staying here is suicide." Stone's radio crackled. Bishop's voice transmitted from Fort Harrison's Tactical Operations Center 50 miles away. "Stone, this is Bishop. I've been monitoring your frequency. Harper's assessment is correct. Satellite shows multiple blocking positions around Rally Point Bravo. You need to move. Now." Stone looked at the radio, at Harper, at the wounded men who represented what remained of his command. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of calculation. "Show me the route, Chief Kincaid," he said quietly, "and pray to God it works." The forest swallowed them whole. 4 kilometers through mountain wilderness in January darkness. Morrison on a makeshift stretcher fashioned from pine poles and torn combat shirts. Tyler limping but refusing assistance, his rifle clutched like a talisman against the pain radiating from his thigh. Grayson moving between them with the quiet efficiency of a medic who had learned that hope was just another form of vital sign to monitor. Stone led from the front now, no longer the commander who issued orders from certainty. Something humbler, something that looked like a man who had learned that pride was expensive and payment came due in blood. Harper moved 50 meters ahead of the main element, scouting, reading terrain in the darkness, becoming the eyes that saw threats before threats saw them. The movement took hours, not the quick tactical bound Stone had planned, but a grinding crawl through darkness with Morrison's stretcher requiring 4 hands and Tyler's wounded legs slowing every step. Harper checked her watch. 130 hours, 7 hours since the ridge, 7 hours that felt like weeks. The temperature had dropped to 32 degrees. Cold enough that breath turned to vapor. Cold enough that sweat froze against skin beneath layers of insulation. Cold enough that Morrison's shivering had stopped, which Grayson said was bad. Said it meant the body was giving up on generating heat. Said they had hours, not days. Maybe not even hours. Harper navigated by starlight and instinct. The moon was a sliver above the ridgeline, offering just enough illumination to distinguish trees from shadows. Just enough to keep moving without headlamps that would announce their position to anyone watching. And someone was watching. She felt it the way animals feel storms coming. That primitive awareness that said predators were circling. That whispered of violence waiting for the right moment. Her radio crackled. Bishop's voice transmitted from the Tactical Operations Center where satellite feeds painted pictures of terrain Harper was living in real time. Harper, this is Bishop. I'm tracking your movement. You've got good spacing, good pace, but I need you to know what you're walking into. She keyed her mic twice. Acknowledgement without words. Satellite thermal shows multiple contacts converging on your route. I count at least 40 distinct signatures. They're moving to intercept before you reach Copper Ridge. 40 against 5 operators, 2 of them wounded, 1 of them dying. The leader is Dmitry Volkov, former Russian Spetsnaz. Dishonorably discharged in 2011 for civilian casualties in Chechnya. He's been running private military contracts ever since. 70-plus confirmed kills as a counter-sniper. Harper felt something cold settle in her chest, not fear. Something harder. Something that recognized that this had stopped being a mission and become something personal. He knows about you, Harper, about the kills on the ridge. He's making this a hunt. Wants to prove Russian training superior to American. Wants your head as a trophy. She thought about the voice on the enemy radio. The careful precision of someone speaking English as a second language. The promise to take her alive first. To make her understand before she died. Bishop continued, I'll guide you as long as I can. But Harper, this man is good. Everything I taught you, you're going to need it all. Harper keyed her mic once. Understood. She moved through the forest with renewed purpose. Every sense extended, every shadow examined, every sound cataloged and assessed. 200 meters ahead, she heard water running, a creek still liquid despite the cold because mountain springs flowed from depths where winter couldn't reach. The sound meant crossing point, meant exposure, meant danger. She approached with the patience Bishop had taught her, slow movement, eyes adjusting to the variations in darkness, looking for shapes that didn't belong, for angles too straight, for the absence of sound where sound should be. Found them, 2 men, positioned on the far side of the creek, militia by their posture and equipment. Not the professionals from earlier, but still threats, still obstacles between her team and survival. They were talking quietly, voices carrying across the water in the still air. She couldn't make out words, but she could read body language. Bored, cold, wishing they were somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere that didn't require standing guard in mountain darkness. Harper evaluated her options with clinical detachment. Shooting would announce her position, would bring every enemy in the area converging on the sound, would cost ammunition she couldn't spare. Bypassing would add time they didn't have. Morrison's breathing had developed that wet rattle Grayson said meant internal bleeding. Every minute delayed reduced his chances from slim to none. That left close quarters. She signaled the team to hold position. Received Stone's acknowledgement through hand signals in the darkness. Then she moved. The creek was 15 feet wide, shallow enough to wade, cold enough to steal breath and clarity if she let it. Harper entered the water moving like oil spreading across surface. No splashing, no disturbance, just the subtle displacement of liquid around a body that had learned to become part of whatever environment it occupied. The current pulled at her legs, tried to unbalance her. She compensated without thinking. Muscle memory from training in Louisiana bayous, where one wrong step meant alligators and mud that swallowed the unwary. 3 feet from the bank, 2 feet, 1. The first century never heard her coming. Harper's hand clamped over his mouth as her Ka-bar knife found the gap between his skull and spine. Medical precision. The blade severed the connection between brain and body. Death came instantly, silently. His weapon never moved from his shoulder. She caught his weight as he collapsed, lowered him into the ferns without sound. Her hands were steady, her breathing unchanged. The kill was just geometry and anatomy, just the application of force at the correct angle with sufficient speed. The second sentry turned at some instinct, some animal awareness that his partner had stopped existing. His eyes found Harper emerging from the darkness. His mouth opened to shout, to warn, to transform this moment from stealth into chaos. She was already moving. The distance between them closed in one stride. Her blade took him across the throat, a horizontal cut that opened arteries and windpipe. The shout became a wet gurgle. The gurgle became silence. He collapsed against her, his blood warm on her hands, his final breath a whisper swallowed by forest and night. Harper lowered him beside his companion, cleaned her blade on his shirt with movements made mechanical by repetition. 7 confirmed now, 7 human beings whose lives had ended because they stood between her and protecting her team. She felt nothing, not satisfaction, not remorse, just a cold acknowledgement that this was the work. This was what her father had done, what Bishop had done, what she did. The killing was just math. The consequences would come later. She searched the bodies with efficient thoroughness, 2 fragmentation grenades from the first, an enemy radio from the second, and from the second's jacket pocket, a topographic map marked with positions and routes. Harper studied the map by filtered moonlight, felt her stomach tighten. 4 marked positions, blocking forces around every logical extraction point, numbers written beside each 1215, 1820, totaling 65 enemy fighters distributed across terrain that offered no good options. And at the bottom of the map, written in Cyrillic script she recognized from training, Volkov. She keyed her radio. Overwatch to lead, creek crossing secure, 2 tangos down, but we have a problem. Stone's voice came back immediately. Send it. They're waiting for us. 4 blocking positions between here and any extraction point. 60 plus total force. Professional positions. This isn't random, Senior Chief. This is coordinated. Silence on the radio. Harper could almost hear Stone recalculating, reassessing, confronting the mathematics that said they were outgunned, outnumbered, and out of good options. Bishop's voice cut through. Harper, this is Bishop. I'm seeing the same thing on satellite. But there's a window. The northern blocking force is undermanned. Only 12 fighters covering the approach to Copper Ridge. If you move now, you can get through before they reinforce. Time window. 30 minutes, maybe 40. After that, they'll have shifted forces to plug the gap. Harper looked at the creek, at the forest beyond, at the darkness that hid threats she could feel but not see. We're moving, she said. The team crossed the creek in tactical silence. Morrison, strapped to his stretcher, unconscious now, which Grayson said was a mercy, said the pain from 2 bullets in the chest wasn't something anyone should be awake for. Tyler waded through on his wounded leg without complaint, without sound. Just the grim determination of an operator who knew that weakness got everyone killed. Stone moved last, covering their rear, his rifle tracking the shadows behind them. When he reached the far bank, his eyes found Harper's. Good work, he said quietly. 2 words that carried the weight of apology and acknowledgement in the beginning of something that might eventually look like respect. They pressed north through terrain that fought them, fallen logs hidden under snow, ravines that appeared without warning, slopes that turned ankles and stole breath and made every meter feel like a kilometer. Harper navigated by the map she had taken, by Bishop's guidance transmitted from satellite 50 miles away, by instinct developed across 3 deployments and 41 kills. 43 now. The bodies at the creek had earned their place in that accounting. The forest changed as they moved deeper. Old-growth pine gave way to mixed hardwood, aspen and birch standing white as bone in the darkness. The understory thickened, made movement harder, made sound impossible to avoid. Behind them, Harper heard shouts, distant but growing closer. The bodies at the creek had been discovered. The hunt was intensifying. Bishop's voice came urgent through her earpiece. Harper, they're mobilizing. I'm seeing thermal signatures converging on your last known position. You need to move faster. Morrison can't move faster. Then you need to decide what matters more, the mission or the man. The choice hung in the frozen air. Leave Morrison, move fast, save 3 by sacrificing 1. The cold calculus of triage that said some lives could be traded for others. Stone's voice cut through before Harper could respond. No one gets left behind. We move together or we die together. Harper felt something shift. Not agreement necessarily, but understanding. Stone had lost a daughter to a system that made calculations about acceptable losses. He wouldn't participate in that mathematics again. Then we need to buy time, Harper said. Create a delay. She pulled the 2 grenades from her vest, studied the terrain ahead through her night vision, saw a narrow defile where the trail passed between 2 granite outcroppings, a natural choke point. I can slow them down, she said. Set an ambush at the pass, make them cautious, buy you the time you need. Stone shook his head. That's suicide. You'll be isolated, outnumbered. I'll be doing my job. Harper met his eyes. You need to get Morrison to extraction. That's your dome. This is mine. Grayson stepped forward. Let me go with you. 2 shooters double the effectiveness. Negative. Morrison needs you more than I do. The medic held her gaze, used her first name, which he rarely did. Harper, come back. That's an order from someone who doesn't have authority to give orders, she replied. The echo of her earlier words. The reflection of a promise she couldn't make, but could try to keep. She turned to Stone. Give me 15 minutes. Then move. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just get them to Copper Ridge. Stone studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. 15 minutes. Harper moved into the darkness alone. The defile was perfect for what she needed. 30 meters of narrow trail between rock walls that funneled movement. No way around. No good options except through. She positioned herself 20 meters from the entrance. Elevated. Behind a cluster of boulders that offered cover and concealment. Fields of fire that swept the kill zone. Then she waited. The first lesson Bishop had taught her. The hardest lesson. Waiting wasn't absence. Waiting was presence stretched across time. She heard them coming 12 minutes later. Voices in Russian and accented English. The sound of many boots on frozen ground. Tactical movement, but without stealth. They knew their quarry was running. New numbers favored the hunter. They were wrong about that. Harper pulled the pin on the first grenade, held the spoon, counted to 3, cooking the fuse, reducing the time between impact and detonation, giving the enemy no chance to escape. She threw. The grenade arced through darkness, bounced once at the entrance to the defile, detonated. The explosion was thunder in the confined space. Shrapnel screamed off rock walls. Harper heard screams, heard bodies falling, heard the chaos of an assault column suddenly confronted with violence from an unexpected angle. She didn't wait for the smoke to clear. Her hands found reckoning, brought the rifle to her shoulder. The scope painted the defile in shades of green through night vision. 3 bodies down from the grenade, others scrambling, seeking cover that didn't exist in the narrow passage. Harper's crosshairs found the first target, a man reaching for his weapon. Range 340 meters. Wind negligible in the sheltered defile. Temperature 32 degrees. The mathematics of death made simple by geography. Reckoning spoke. The man dropped. She cycled the action, the brass casing ejecting in a golden arc that caught moonlight for one frozen moment before falling into snow. Second target, a fighter turning toward the muzzle flash, trying to locate her position. Too late. The rifle cracked. The fighter collapsed. Third target running. Fourth target diving behind a body. Fifth target raising his weapon toward her position. She shot them all. The defile became an abattoir. Bodies stacked on bodies. The living trampling the dead in their desperation to escape the kill zone. Harper tracked them through her scope with the detached precision of someone conducting a clinical experiment. Hypothesis: one sniper with elevated position and superior marksmanship can stop a force 20 times her size. Results confirmed. 8 rounds fired, 8 targets down. The remaining fighters broke and ran, fled back the way they had come, their advance shattered by violence from darkness. Harper lowered her rifle, checked her ammunition. 27 rounds remaining in reckoning, 15 in her sidearm. 42 total, 11 confirmed kills since the ridge. She keyed her radio. Overwatch to lead. Northern approach delayed. You have your window. Move now. Stone's response came immediate. What about you? I'll catch up. Just move. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. Just started moving herself. Relocating before the enemy regrouped. before they brought numbers and coordination against her position. The forest closed around her again. She moved northwest, parallel to her team's rope but offset, creating distance, making herself the target instead of them, drawing the wolves away from the wounded. Her radio crackled, not the team frequency, the enemy frequency she had been monitoring. Volkov's voice, speaking English now, speaking directly to her, though he couldn't possibly know she was listening. American sniper, I know you hear this. I know you understand. Harper kept moving, but her hand found the volume control. Turned it up. You fight well, better than I expected. But you are alone, and I have 40 men. 32 now, Harper thought, adjusted for casualties. You cannot win, but you can choose how you lose. A pause. Surrender. I promise quick death. Continue running, and I promise you will beg for death before I grant it. Harper's jaw tightened. She keyed her mic, transmitted on the enemy frequency. Volkov, this is the American sniper you're hunting. Silence on the other end. She could almost feel his surprise. I have a message for you, she continued, her voice flat, emotionless. You have 32 men left. I have 42 rounds. The math doesn't favor you as much as you think. She released the key, switched back to her team frequency. Stone's voice came through immediately. Harper, what the hell are you doing? Don't antagonize him. Already did. He's going to focus on me now. Take the pressure off you. That's tactically sound, Bishop's voice cut in. She's drawing aggro, buying you movement time. Don't waste it, Stone. Get to Copper Ridge. Harper heard Stone's exhale through the radio, then, don't die out there, Chief Kincaid. Wasn't planning on it, Senior Chief. She moved deeper into the wilderness, into terrain that grew rougher with each step. Boulder fields and deadfall and slopes that required hands as much as feet. Behind her, she heard them coming, heard Volkov's men spreading out, coordinating, hunting with the patience of professionals who knew that prey eventually made mistakes. She thought about her father, about Bishop, about the legacy that rifle across her back represented. 168 kills before her, 11 more since the ridge. 179 lives ended by the weapon she carried. How many more before this night was over? The terrain opened into a small valley, meadow grass buried under snow, open ground that offered no cover, no concealment, just exposure measured in hundreds of meters. Harper studied it through her scope, saw movement on the far side, thermal signatures resolving into human shapes, the blocking force Bishop had mentioned, 12 fighters positioned to intercept anyone trying to reach Copper Ridge, between her and the mining camp that represented salvation. She checked her watch. The team was 20 minutes behind her. Maybe less if they were moving fast. They would arrive at this meadow and walk into those 12 rifles, and that would be the end. Unless someone removed the obstacle first. Harper evaluated the geometry, the distance, the available cover, came to the conclusion that this was impossible, then decided to do it anyway. She circled east, using the tree line for concealment, moving to a position that would give her an angle on the blocking force, found a small rise that offered elevation and sightlines, set up reckoning with the methodical precision of ritual. This was different from the defile, different from the ridge. Those had been targets at distance, threats she could engage with all the advantages of surprise and position. This was 12 men in defensive positions who were actively watching for threats. 12 men who would locate her the moment she fired, who would return fire with volume and aggression. This was the kind of engagement that killed snipers. Harper thought about Grayson's words. Come back. An order from someone without authority. She thought about Tyler's hand on her shoulder, about Morrison's unborn daughter, about Stone's dead girl and Bishop's living regret. She thought about her father bleeding out in Fallujah while Bishop watched through a scope and couldn't save him. Some things were worth dying for. Harper settled into position, found her first target through the scope, a fighter standing near a campfire they had built despite tactical protocols, warming his hands, making himself a perfect silhouette against the flames. Range 420 meters. Wind 6 miles per hour, quartering left. Temperature dropping toward 28 degrees. She controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, became stone, became steel, became the rifle and the bullet and the inevitable conclusion of geometry and physics. The crosshairs settled on center mass. Harper pulled the trigger. Reckoning roared. The fighter dropped. Chaos erupted in the blocking position, men scrambling, seeking cover, returning fire toward her muzzle flash. Harper had already moved, rolled 3 meters left, found new position, acquired second target, a man raising his rifle toward where she had been. She shot him. Third target, fourth target, fifth. The rifle became an extension of her intent. The bolts snapped forward with each cycle, brass ejecting, new rounds chambering, the scope finding targets with predatory efficiency. Return fire chewed the hillside around her, bullets impacting rock and tree, close enough to spray her with debris, close enough to remind her that she was mortal and mistakes were fatal. She kept shooting. Sixth target down. Seventh. Her radio crackled. Bishop's voice. Urgent. Harper Thermal shows reinforcements converging on your position. Volkov's main force. 2 minutes out. You need to break contact. Not yet. Her voice was calm, detached, focused on the work. Eighth target. Ninth. Harper, they're going to surround you. I know. 10th target acquired. 11th. The blocking force was down to one man. One fighter still returning fire. Still fighting despite watching 11 companions die in as many seconds. Harper's crosshairs found him. Watched him realize he was alone. Watched the calculation flash across his face. Fight or flee. He chose flee. She let him run. 12 would have been symmetry, but 11 was good enough. Harper packed her position. The hillside was lit by muzzle flashes now. Volkov's reinforcements arriving, surrounding, cutting off retreat. She went the only direction available. Down into the valley, across the open meadow where cover didn't exist and exposure meant death. She ran. Behind her, automatic weapons fire tore the night. Tracers arced across the darkness like falling stars. Bullets plowed snow around her feet. The sound was thunder. The sound was chaos. The sound was death reaching for her and missing by inches. Harper didn't look back, just ran, focused on the tree line ahead, on the sanctuary of forest and darkness. 50 meters, 40, 30. Something punched her shoulder. Not hard enough to knock her down, but hard enough to spin her sideways. Enough to tell her she'd been hit. She kept running. 20 meters, 10. The trees swallowed her. The shooting continued, but the angles were wrong now. The bullets found wood instead of flesh. Harper collapsed behind a massive pine. Her shoulder screamed. She looked down, saw blood spreading across her jacket. Through and through, the bullet had entered the meat of her shoulder and exited without hitting bone or artery. Lucky, a distant part of her mind observed. The kind of lucky that kept you breathing. She keyed her tardio with her functioning hand. Overwatch to lead. Blocking position neutralized. Path to Copper Ridge is clear. Stone's voice came back. Harper, your transmission is breaking up. Say again your status. I'm fine, just move. Get to the ridge. I'll meet you there. She released the key before he could question the lie, before the pain in her voice could betray the truth. Harper pulled medical supplies from her kit. Pressure bandage. Applied it one-handed with movements made clumsy by shock and cold. The bleeding slowed. Didn't stop, but slowed. Good enough. She stood, tested her weight, tested her balance. Everything worked. Everything hurt, but worked. Behind her, she heard Volkov's voice, shouting orders in Russian, coordinating the search, getting closer. Harper checked her ammunition. 21 rounds reckoning, 15 pistol, 36 total against however many fighters Volkov had left. She thought about Bishop's words, about choosing the moment, about knowing when to pull the trigger. She thought about her father's sacrifice, about legacy and duty and the weight of carrying both. Then she started moving. Not running now, moving with purpose, with direction, toward Copper Ridge, toward her team, toward whatever ending waited in the darkness ahead. The mine camp appeared like a ghost from history, stone foundations emerging from forest and snow, collapsed timber structures that had once processed copper ore in the days when men believed the earth owed them its riches. Harper approached from the east, moving slow despite urgency, despite blood loss and cold, and the knowledge that Volkov's hunters were minutes behind her. She keyed her radio. Overwatch approaching from east. Don't shoot. Stone's voice, copy. Come in slow. She crossed the open ground to the main structure. Found her team positioned in defensive arrangements. Grayson with Morrison behind a stone wall. Tyler covering the southern approach despite his wounded leg. Stone at the main entrance with fields of fire that swept the clearing. They looked exhausted. Looked like men who had run out of options and found themselves at the end of geography by syndrome. Stone's eyes found her. Widened when he saw the blood. You're hit. Through and through, functional. She moved to the wall, set reckoning down with care that bordered on reverence. How's Morrison? Grayson's face told the story before his words did. Stable, barely. He needs surgery, needs blood, needs things we don't have. Harper nodded, looked at the foundations around them. The walls that had stood for 140 years. The stone that had outlasted the men who built it. We hold here, she said. QRF is coming. We just need to survive until they arrive. Against how many? Tyler asked, his voice tight with pain and something harder. Something that recognized mathematics. Harper thought about the bodies, about the kills since the ridge, about Volkov's forces depleted but not destroyed. 30, maybe 35. Stone's expression didn't change, just accepted the number, accepted the odds. Then we make our stand. Harper's radio crackled. Bishop's voice, steady despite everything. Steady because he had been here before, had faced impossible odds and survived through skill and luck and violence delivered with precision. Harper, this is Bishop. I'm looking at satellite thermal. You've got 15 minutes before Volkov's main force arrives, maybe 20. Use that time. Prepare, because when they come, they're coming with everything. Understood? And Harper, a pause. What you did tonight, William would have done the same. You carry his courage. Harper felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, opening, letting in emotions she had kept locked down since the ridge, since the killing started, since the moment she chose disobedience and set all of this in motion. Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me yet. Survive the next hour, then we'll talk about gratitude. The radio went silent. Harper looked at her team, at Stone, who had tried to abandon her and learned humility, at Grayson, who carried healing hands and warrior's heart, at Tyler, who refused to quit despite shrapnel and in pain, at Morrison, who hung on to life through sheer stubborn will. 15 minutes, she said. Let's make them count. They set to work with the efficiency of operators who knew that preparation was the difference between survival and massacre. Tyler rigged tripwire at the eastern approach. Detonation cord and the last fragmentation grenade. Not much, but enough to announce arrival. Enough to buy seconds. Stone positioned himself at the main entrance. Natural funnel point. Fields of fire that would force attackers to bunch up. To present targets. Grayson stayed with Morrison. Refused to leave his patient even as perimeter collapsed. The medic's oath transcending tactical necessity. Harper climbed to the second floor of the assay office. The floor was partially collapsed but stable enough. The walls were broken but provided cover. And most importantly, the elevation gave her sight lines across the entire camp. She set up reckoning with movements that had become ritual. Bipod deployed, scope zeroed. Range card created marking distances to key terrain features. Then she waited. The moon had set. The darkness was complete, except for starlight reflecting off snow. Harper's world reduced to the green glow of night vision and the patient silence of Stone. She thought about the rifle in her hands, about Bishop carrying it through Desert Storm, through Mogadishu, through Fallujah, where her father died. She thought about the engraving on the stock. G beat them, Fallujah 2004. When this was over, if she survived, she would add her own mark. HK, Montana 20 tonning, a record of presence, a claim that she had been here, had fought here, had held the line when everything said to run. Her radio crackled. Bishop's voice, quiet now, almost gentle. They're here, Harper. Thermal shows multiple contacts at the perimeter. Volkov is with them, center of the formation. He's leading this personally. I see them. Through her scope, she watched the forest give birth to violence. 30 men emerging from darkness, moving with tactical precision, surrounding the camp with professional calm. And in the center, one man who moved differently, who commanded without speaking. who radiated authority like heat. Dmitry Volkov, the Wolf. Harper's crosshairs found him. Range 850 meters. Wind calm. Temperature 26 degrees. The perfect shot. The kill that would decapitate enemy command and shatter their coordination. Her finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. 4 pounds. 6 pounds. She didn't fire. Because killing Volkov now would trigger the assault, would start the battle on his terms. His men would go to ground, would establish positions, would bring their full numbers to bear in coordinated violence. But if she waited, if she let them commit to their attack, let them expose themselves in the moment of assault, then one shot at the right time would be worth 10 at the wrong time. Patience Bishop had taught her. Patience her grandfather had shown her. Patience was the gator waiting for the perfect moment. Harper waited. Volkov raised his hand. The assault began. Tyler's tripwire detonated. The explosion tore through the eastern approach. Bodies flying, screams cutting the night. Then gunfire. Muzzle flashes painting the darkness in strobe. The thunder of automatic weapons against the crack of American rifles returning disciplined fire. Harper's scope tracked the chaos. Found targets. Started working. 21 rounds left. 21 chances to change the outcome. Reckoning spoke. The killing began again. The first shot was Mercy, a fighter advancing on Tyler's position. Rifle raised, finger tightening on trigger. Range 520 meters. Wind negligible in the sheltered valley. Temperature dropping through 24 degrees toward the kind of cold that made metal brittle and breath crystallize. Harper's crosshairs settled on center mass. The geometry of interception calculated in the half-second between observation and execution. Reckoning cracked. The fighter dropped mid-stride. His weapon tumbled from hands that would never grip anything again. His body folded into the snow like discarded clothing. 20 rounds remaining. Harper worked the bolt, chambered another round, found her next target, second shot, third, fourth. The rifle spoke with methodical precision. Each shot a statement, each kill a calculation. The mathematics of survival written in gunpowder and blood. Below, Stone's rifle hammered from the main entrance. Controlled bursts. 2 rounds shift 2 rounds. The rhythm of a man who had been doing this for 19 years. Who understood that ammunition was finite and panic was fatal. Tyler returned fire from the southern wall despite the pain radiating from his thigh. Despite the blood seeping through bandages that Grayson had applied with shaking hands and muttered prayers. The camp became a fortress. Stone walls that had stood since 1880 now standing again. Holding back violence. Buying time measured in heartbeats and bullet counts. Harper's scope found Volkov through the chaos. Still at 850 meters. Still directing his forces with hand signals. Still confident that numbers would prevail over skill. She could take the shot now. Could end him. Could watch the wolf fall and his pack scatter. But the assault was committed. His men were advancing under fire. Taking casualties but pressing forward with the momentum of superior numbers. Killing Volkov now wouldn't stop them. Would just make them angry. No. Better to wait. Better to let the assault reach its critical moment. Then break it with precision that would shatter morale along with the body. Patience. 5th shot. 6th. 7th. Harper worked reckoning like a craftsman working a familiar tool. The scope finding targets. The trigger breaking clean. The rifle recoiling against her wounded shoulder with pain that she registered and ignored. Information, not sensation. Data to be processed later. 14 rounds remaining. Her radio crackled, Bishop's voice cutting through the thunder of gunfire. Harper Thermal shows they're massing for a push on the north wall. Stone can't hold them alone. She shifted her scope, saw the concentration of forces. 20 fighters gathering in the tree line, preparing to rush the breach that sustained fire had created in the mining camp's defenses. 20 against 1. Against Stone, who was good but not invincible, who was running out of ammunition and options in equal measure. Harper's crosshairs found the first target, then the second, then the third, and started shooting. The massed assault faltered as bodies began dropping. Fighters looking for the threat, looking for the sniper who was dismantling their attack from elevation they couldn't reach with small arms fire. 8 rounds fired in rapid succession. 8 men down, The assault wave broke, scattered, sought cover in terrain that offered none. 6 rounds remaining in reckoning. Harper ejected the magazine. Her hands found a fresh one in the darkness. 20 rounds, slapped it home with movements made automatic by 10,000 repetitions. 26 total rounds left. Through her scope, she watched Volkov realize what was happening. Watched him understand that the sniper on the second floor was the fulcrum, the critical point. Remove her and the defense collapsed. He barked orders in Russian, pointed toward the assay office, designated 6 men for the task. They moved toward Harper's position with tactical precision. Bounding overwatch, covering each other's advance. Professional movement that said these weren't militia, these were soldiers. Harper tracked the lead man through her scope, range 340 meters in closing. She could shoot him, could shoot all 6. But that would empty her magazine, would leave her with nothing when the main assault resumed. Choices, always choices, each one paid for in blood. She let them come. At 200 meters, they were close enough to throw grenades, close enough to suppress her position with automatic fire while others advanced. One of them raised his arm, dark sphere in his hand, cooking the fuse, preparing to throw. Harper shot him. The grenade dropped at his feet, detonated. The explosion consumed him and the 2 men closest. The remaining 3 scattered, sought cover behind rubble and foundation stones. She tracked them through her scope, waited for mistakes, for the moment when cover became exposure, when fear made them careless. There, one man rising to move. Harper's crosshairs found him. The trigger broke. He dropped. 2 left. They were learning, staying low, moving with care that bordered on paralysis, understanding that the sniper above them was patient, was willing to wait, was death wearing camouflage and night vision. Harper's radio crackled, Stone's voice, strained but functional. North wall is holding, but we're running low on ammunition. I've got maybe 40 rounds left. Tyler's voice joined. South wall critical. I'm down to my sidearm. 40 rounds plus 15, 55 total for the ground defense. Harper had 23 in reckoning, 15 in her pistol, 38, 93 rounds against however many fighters Volkov had left. The mathematics were approaching zero. Through her scope, Harper watched Volkov pull back, watched him consolidate his forces, regroup, reassess. He was learning too. Understanding that frontal assault was expensive, that the Americans were making him pay for every meter with blood. Bishop's voice came through the radio, measured despite the circumstances. Harper, I'm watching satellite thermal. Volkov is changing tactics. He's going to encircle the camp, set up positions, turn this into a siege. We don't have time for a siege. I know. Morrison doesn't either. Grayson says maybe an hour, maybe less. Harper looked at her watch. 03:115 hours. QRF launch time was 04:30. Arrival time 0500. 1 hour 45 minutes until rescue. Morrison didn't have 1 hour 45 minutes. I need to change the equation, Harper said. What are you thinking? Volkov is directing everything. Take him out, the command structure collapses. They'll lose coordination, maybe break entirely. That's an 850-meter shot in darkness, extreme range, and he's not standing still anymore. He's learning to be cautious. I know. Silence on the radio. Then Bishop's voice carrying something that sounded like pride mixed with concern. Your father made a similar call in Fallujah, decided the risk was worth the potential gain. It got him killed. I'm not my father. No, you're better trained, better equipped, but the principle is the same. High risk, high reward. And if you miss, Volkov will know exactly where you are. Harper thought about the choices that had led here. The disobedience on the ridge, the knife work at the creek, the stand at the depot, the blocking force in the meadow. Each decision a gamble, each one paying off through skill and luck in quantities she couldn't measure. How much luck did she have left? I'm taking the shot, she said. Then make it count. Harper settled into position. Reckoning's bipod adjusted for the extreme angle. Scope dialed to maximum magnification. The world reduced to green glow and crosshairs. She found Volkov through the scope. He was moving between positions, checking his men, maintaining morale through presence and confidence, leadership through example. He would make a good enemy to kill. Range 850 meters. Wind picking up. 5 miles per hour, quartering right. Temperature 23 degrees. Barometric pressure dropping as weather front moved through. Harper ran the calculations. Bullet drop at this range was 14.2 mils. Wind drift approximately 1.1 mils right. Temperature affecting velocity, requiring an additional zero point 0.3 mils elevation. She dialed the adjustments into her scope, felt the clicks beneath her fingers. Each click representing zero point 0.1 mils, representing the difference between hit and miss, between changing the battle and wasting ammunition she couldn't spare. Through the scope, Volkov paused, stood still for a moment, checking a map, giving orders to a subordinate. Harper controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, became stone, became steel, became the bullet's path through space and time. The crosshairs settled on his chest. Center mass, largest target, highest probability of hit. She began the trigger press. 2 pounds, 4 pounds. Volkov moved. Harper released the trigger, tracked him through the scope, waited for another opportunity. He was restless now, moving constantly, never still for more than a second. Had he sensed the danger? Did some instinct warn him that death was watching from distance? She waited. Patience against motion, stillness against activity. 30 seconds passed. 60, 90. There. Volkov stopped again, raised binoculars toward the mining camp, studying the defenses, searching for weakness. Harper's crosshairs found him. Settled on the center of his chest, began the trigger press again. This time she didn't stop. The trigger broke at 6 pounds. Reckoning roared. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder. The muzzle flashed momentarily blinding through night vision. She reloaded in one fluid motion, chambered another round, found the target again through her scope. Volkov was down, but moving. The shot had hit. She saw blood, saw him clutching his shoulder where the bullet had struck. But the range and the darkness and the small movements she couldn't account for had shifted the point of impact. Shoulder instead of chest, wound instead of kill. He was screaming, pointing toward her position, directing his men with his functioning arm. Harper had time for one thought: I should have waited for a better shot. Then the return fire started. Automatic weapons opened up on the assay office. Hundreds of rounds chewing through stone and timber. The walls around her disintegrating under sustained fire. Rock chips and splinters filling the air like shrapnel. Harper pressed herself flat against the floor. Felt bullets passing overhead. Felt the building shaking under the impact. This was what her father had faced. This was the violence that had ended him. The overwhelming firepower that turned cover into illusion and survival into luck. She keyed her radio, had to shout to be heard over the gunfire. Position compromised, taking heavy fire. Stone's voice came back. Fall back to ground floor, we'll cover you. Harper low-crawled toward the stairs. Reckoning clutched against her chest. Every meter bought with patience and prayer. The firing continued. The building groaned. Timbers cracked and fell. She made it to the stairs, started descending. The steps were treacherous, half collapsed, rotten with age and weather. Her boot found empty air where a step should have been. She fell, tumbled down the remaining stairs, landed hard on the ground floor, her wounded shoulder screaming, reckoning clattering across stone. She lay there for a moment, stunned, trying to remember how to breathe. Stone's face appeared above her. Can you move? Harper nodded, pushed herself up, reached for reckoning. Her fingers found the familiar stock, found the engraving. GB Fallujah 2004. The rifle was undamaged, the scope still zeroed, the weapon still ready, just like her. She rose, moved to a firing position at a broken window. Below she saw movement, fighters advancing under cover of the suppressing fire, getting closer, 30 meters. 20. Harper raised reckoning, started shooting. The advancing fighters fell. 1, 2, 3. Adi's shot precise despite pain and chaos and the knowledge that ammunition was running out. Beside her, Stone fired his rifle until it clicked empty. He drew his sidearm, kept firing, kept fighting. Tyler appeared from the south wall, limping, his face gray with pain. He still carried his rifle, still looked for targets. Grayson stayed with Morrison. The medic's hands pressed against chest wounds that leaked life faster than skill could preserve it. He was crying, Harper could see it from across the room, could see the medic understanding that his patient was dying and there was nothing medicine could do. The assault intensified, fighters at the walls now, climbing through breaches, the perimeter collapsing under weight of numbers. Harper shot until reckoning clicked, empty. 20 rounds gone. She dropped the magazine, reached for her last one, found nothing. She was out. Her hand moved to her sidearm. 15 rounds, 15 chances against dozens of enemies. The mathematics had reached zero. A grenade tumbled through the window, landed on the floor, rolled toward Morrison's position, toward Grayson, who was still trying to save the dying man. Tyler saw it. Harper watched what happened next in the slow motion that crisis brings. Watched Tyler's eyes go wide. Watched him understand what was about to happen. Watched him make a choice. He threw himself on the grenade. Harper screamed. The sound tore from her throat. Raw. Animal. The sound of watching someone choose death. Tyler wrapped his body around the explosive. Became a shield of flesh and bone. The detonation was muffled. Contained. The blast that should have killed everyone in the room was absorbed by one man's sacrifice. Harper was moving before the echo faded. Drew her sidearm. Fired into the faces climbing through the window. The pistol bucked in her hand. 3 rounds. 3 targets down. But they kept coming. Stone fought beside her, his pistol empty now, using it as a club, striking, blocking, fighting with the desperation of a man who had run out of everything except will. A fighter broke through, grabbed Harper, slammed her against the wall. Her wounded shoulder hit Stone. Pain exploded white behind her eyes. She drove her knee into his groin, twisted free, drew her knife, put the blade through his throat. Hot blood sprayed across her face. She pushed him away, found her next target. The room was chaos. Bodies everywhere. Living and dead tangled together. The air thick with smoke and screaming. Harper fired her pistol until the slide locked back. Empty. She looked for another magazine, found none, just the knife now, just her hands. She fought anyway. A young fighter appeared in front of her. Barely 20. His rifle raised, his hands shaking. He aimed at her chest. Harper met his eyes. Didn't look away. If death was coming, she would watch it arrive. The fighter's finger tightened on the trigger. Light flooded the building, blinding white light that turned night to day. Helicopter searchlights blazing through every opening. The roar of rotors drowning all other sound. A voice boomed from speakers overhead. American voice. Authority that brooked no argument. Drop your weapons. United States military has the area surrounded. Drop your weapons now. The young fighter looked up at the lights, looked back at Harper. His rifle wavered. Drop it, Harper said quietly. Live through this. He dropped the rifle, raised his hands. Around the room, other fighters did the same. The aggression draining from them. Survival instinct overriding combat orders. They surrendered. Harper slumped against the wall, looked at the carnage around her. At Tyler's body still wrapped around the grenade that had killed him. At Stone, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing. At Grayson, kneeling beside Morrison, checking for a pulse he wouldn't find. At the rifle on the floor. Reckoning. Still there. Still witness to everything that had happened. They had held. The line had held. The cost had been terrible. But they had held. The medevac helicopter lifted off at 05:20 hours. Harper sat in the crew bay, her shoulder wrapped in fresh bandages. The medic had given her morphine, but she had refused. Wanted to feel everything. Wanted to remember. Morrison's body was in a bag at her feet. Tyler's beside it. 2 men who had trusted her, who had followed her lead, who had died because she had made choices. Stone sat across from her. His face was a roadmap of violence, bruises and cuts, and the hollow eyes of a man who had seen too much. But he was alive. He was breathing. He met Harper's gaze, held it. You saved us, he said quietly. Every decision you made, every order you disobeyed, you saved us. Harper looked at the body bags. I didn't save everyone. No one could have. The mathematics were impossible from the start. But you changed the equation. You made impossible into survivable. She didn't respond, just turned to look out the helicopter door. Watch the mining camp shrink below. Watch the forest give way to foothills. Watch the sun touch the eastern mountains and paint them gold. Beautiful. Montana was beautiful. It had tried to kill her, had killed good men, and it was still beautiful. Bishop's voice came through her headset. "Harper, this is Bishop. How are you holding up?" "I'm alive." "That's a start." A pause. "You did good work out there. 26 confirmed kills with Reckoning in 12 hours. That's a record for the M40 platform in a single domestic operation." 26. The number settled into her mind, added to the 168 before her. 194 lives ended by the rifle lying across her lap. When you land, they're going to want statements. Want to understand what happened. There will be an investigation. "I know." "And Harper," Bishop's voice softened, "you upheld the oath he took, protected those who couldn't protect themselves. That legacy lives on." She closed her eyes, let the words settle, let them ease something that had been tight in her chest since Fallujah, since she was 12 years old and learned that heroes died and daughters grew up alone. "Thank you, Colonel." The helicopter descended toward Fort Harrison, toward questions and consequences and whatever came next. But that was future. This moment was just flight, just distance from violence, just the simple fact of breathing. Harper held Reckoning against her chest, felt the engraving under her fingers. GB, Fallujah 2004. When this was over, she would add her own mark. HK, Montana 2019. A record of presence, a claim that she had been here, had fought here, had held the line, the legacy continuing. The investigation convened 4 days later in a prefabricated building that served as Fort Harrison's administrative center. 3 officers sat behind a folding table, their uniforms crisp, their expressions carefully neutral. Harper sat facing them, her shoulders still in a sling, her dress uniform borrowed from a supply sergeant who had found something close to her size. The questions came methodical, precise, designed to construct a timeline from chaos, to understand how 8 operators had walked into mountains and 3 had walked out. Harper answered truthfully, described the briefing, the insertion, the ambush, the choices she had made. She described disobeying Stone's order on the ridge, described the killing at the creek, the stand at the defeat, the blocking force in the meadow, the final defense at Copper Ridge. She described Tyler's sacrifice, Morrison's death, the body count that had started at 0 and ended at 26. The panel asked about regulations, about chain of command, about the consequences of disobedience in combat operations. Harper provided the answers they needed, the justifications, the tactical reasoning. But she didn't apologize, didn't express regret for choices that had saved lives even as they cost others. Stone testified after her, stood before the panel, and stated for the record that he had deliberately isolated Chief Kincaid due to personal bias, that his judgment had been compromised by the death of his daughter, that his decisions had directly contributed to the ambush and the casualties that followed. He stated that Harper's disobedience had saved every surviving member of the team, that without her actions, all 8 operators would be dead instead of 5. He recommended her for the Silver Star, for actions above and beyond the call of duty in the face of overwhelming enemy force. Bishop testified last, came in wearing his dress uniform for the first time in 10 years. The ribbons on his chest told stories of 30 years in service, told of wars and battles and moments when everything hung on one trigger pull. He spoke about Harper's training, about her character, about the legacy she carried in the rifle she fired. Chief Kincaid, he said, embodies everything a sniper should be. Patience earned through discipline, precision earned through repetition, courage earned through facing fear and choosing action anyway. He paused, met Harper's eyes across the room. She honored her father's sacrifice by protecting others. She honored Reckoning's legacy through precision that left no margin for error. She honored the oath we all take by holding the line when every instinct said to run. The panel deliberated for 2 hours. Harper waited outside, watched Montana winter through frosted windows, thought about Tyler's face in the moment before the grenade detonated, about Morrison's wife receiving the news, about the daughter who would grow up like Harper had, without a father, with only stories and medals and the hollow comfort that he died a hero. The panel called her back inside. The senior officer spoke, his voice formal, the language of military justice that could end careers with a sentence or resurrect them with a phrase. Chief Petty Officer Harper Kincaid, this panel finds that you exercise sound tactical judgment under extraordinary circumstances. Your disobedience of direct orders, while a violation of military protocol, was justified by the immediate threat to your team's survival. He paused, looked at her directly. It is the recommendation of this panel that no disciplinary action be taken. Furthermore, your Silver Star commendation has been approved. There will be a ceremony when you return stateside. Harper absorbed the words, no court-martial, no end to her career. Just an acknowledgement that sometimes the right choice looked like the wrong one until circumstances proved otherwise. This panel also recommends that you be assigned as a sniper instructor at Fort Benning to train the next generation, to pass on the skills and judgment you have demonstrated. Teaching, like Bishop had suggested, like her father might have done if he had lived. A new chapter in a long tradition. Do you accept this assignment, Chief Kincaid? Harper thought about Tyler and Morrison, about the students who would learn from their sacrifice, about making sure that the next generation was better prepared, better trained, better able to survive when mathematics became impossible. Yes, sir, I accept. The ceremony took place 3 weeks later. The parade ground at Fort Harrison filled with sailors in dress uniforms. Their faces turned toward the platform where Harper stood beside Bishop and a row of officers whose ribbons told their own stories. Bishop wore his full dress uniform. The medals on his chest represented 30 years of service. Desert Storm, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, the accumulation of a career spent in violence's service. He had driven 12 hours to be here, had insisted on being the one to pin the medal, had said that some traditions mattered more than convenience. The Admiral read the citation. Harper listened to the words describe what she had done. The clinical language of military commendation, transforming chaos into heroism, transforming fear into valor, transforming survival into something that fit on a ribbon and a piece of paper. The words captured facts. They missed everything that mattered. They didn't mention the taste of fear, didn't describe the weight of choices that cost lives, didn't explain how it felt to watch Tyler die, to hold Morrison's hand while his heart stopped, to see Stone's eyes acknowledge that his pride had nearly killed them all. But that was the nature of citations. They recorded what could be measured. The rest lived only in the memories of those who had been there. Bishop lifted the Silver Star from its case. The medal caught sunlight, blue ribbon with white stars, the same medal her father had been awarded posthumously. He pinned it to Harper's chest with careful precision, then stepped back and saluted. Harper returned the salute, held it for 3 heartbeats, then dropped her hand. The applause began, rolled across the parade ground like thunder. After the ceremony, Bishop found her near the parking lot. The crowds had dispersed. The celebration had moved to the Officers Club, where Harper had made brief appearance before excusing herself. She didn't feel like celebrating. Felt like Tyler and Morrison deserved more than awards and applause. Deserved to be alive. Bishop seemed to understand. He leaned against his truck, weathered hands holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. You did good work, he said, not just the shooting, the leadership, the choices under pressure. She didn't respond, just looked at the mountains beyond the base. I want to give you something. He opened the truck door, pulled out a rifle case, set it on the hood. Harper recognized it, Reckoning's case. The weapon had been at the armory being cleaned, being prepared for return to inventory. I talked to the brass, Bishop said, convinced them that Reckoning should stay with you, that the rifle has earned the right to choose its carrier. He opened the case. The M40A6 lay in foam cutouts, cleaned, oiled, ready. 194 confirmed kills across 30 years, from my hands to yours, from Desert Storm to Montana. This rifle's story isn't finished. Harper lifted the rifle, felt the familiar weight, the balance, saw the engraving on the stock. GB, Fallujah 2004. Below it, fresh engraving and matching script, HK, Montana 2019. Her mark, her claim, her place in the lineage. When you teach at Benning, Bishop continued, you'll train students who will carry this forward, who will add their own names to this rifle's history. The tradition endures. Harper held the rifle against her chest, felt something settle. Not peace exactly, but purpose, direction. Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me. Just make sure the next generation is ready. Make sure they understand that the rifle is a tool, but the shooter is what matters. That patience beats speed. That precision matters more than volume. That sometimes the right choice looks like disobedience until circumstances prove otherwise. He paused, looked at the mountains beyond the base, at the wilderness where good men had died. Your father taught me something in Fallujah. He said that legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you give forward, what you teach, what you pass on. He said that, his last words actually, before the IED, we were talking about what came after deployment. After the war, he said he wanted to teach, wanted to give forward what he'd learned. Bishop met her eyes. He didn't get the chance, but you do, don't waste it. Harper nodded, couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. Bishop climbed into his truck, started the engine, paused with the window down. One more thing. When you find a student who deserves it, someone who understands what this means, you pass reckoning to them. Like I passed it to you. Add your name to this rifle's history. He drove away. Harper watched the truck disappear beyond the gate, watched the dust settle. Then she carried reckoning to her quarters, cleaned it again, though it was already clean. Oil and cloth and the familiar ritual, the meditation of maintenance. She thought about Fort Benning, about students who would look to her for knowledge, for skill, for the wisdom that came from surviving impossible situations. She thought about Tyler's sister Katie, about Morrison's daughter who would be born in 3 months, about Stone, who was teaching at Great Lakes now, passing on lessons learned through blood and failure, the tradition enduring. 8 months later, Harper stood on the rifle range at Fort Benning. 12 students arranged in firing positions, 12 potential snipers learning the craft. One student in particular caught her attention, a young woman, 24 years old, former Army Ranger, Sarah Lancaster. She had the focus, had the discipline, had the stillness that mark natural shooters. Harper watched her run through a training scenario, watched her calculate range and wind, watched her control her breathing, take the shot, hit the target at 800 meters. After the exercise, Harper approached. Lancaster, stay behind. The student's expression flickered. Uncertainty, fear that she had failed. Harper retrieved a rifle case from her office, set it on the bench, opened it. Reckoning lay inside, cleaned, oiled, waiting. This rifle, Harper said, has 194 confirmed kills across 30 years. Colonel Garrett Bishop carried it through Desert Storm, Somalia, and Iraq. My father died in Fallujah. Bishop was his overwatch. She lifted the weapon from the case, saw Sarah's eyes widen. Bishop gave this to me when I graduated sniper school. Said to make every shot count for him. Harper held out the rifle. Now I'm giving you the chance to prove you deserve to carry it. Sarah's hands shook as she took the weapon. I'm not. Fear is data, Harper said quietly. Use it. Honor everyone who came before. The student held reckoning like it was made of glass, like it might shatter if she gripped too hard. Harper showed her the engravings on the stock. GB, Fallujah 2004, HK, Montana 2019, SL, Gao, the third line blank, waiting to be filled. When you earn it, Harper said, when you have proven yourself. We'll add your mark, add your story. Sarah looked up, eyes bright. I won't let you down. Don't let yourself down. Don't let your team down. The rest takes care of itself. Harper stepped back, watched the young woman hold the rifle, watched her feel the weight, the balance, the history contained in wood and metal. Across the range, Bishop stood at the observation deck, watching. He had driven down from Montana for this, had wanted to see the moment when the legacy passed to the next generation. He caught Harper's eye, nodded once. Approval, understanding, pride. Harper nodded back. Then she turned to her student. Let's see what you can do. Range is live, targets at 600 meters. Show me what you've learned. Sarah moved to the firing line, set up the rifle with careful precision, adjusted the bipod, checked the scope. controlled her breathing. Harper watched from behind, saw herself 4 years ago, saw Bishop 30 years ago, saw the lineage stretching backward through time, saw it stretching forward too, into a future where other students would learn, other shooters would carry reckoning, other names would be added to the stock. Sarah settled into position, found her sight picture, began the trigger press. Reckoning spoke. The target fell. Harper smiled, the first genuine smile since Montana. Since Tyler died and Morrison bled out, and the mathematics of survival had compressed down to choices and consequences. Again, she said, and this time tell me what you did wrong. The student chambered the next round, began the process again. Learning, growing, becoming. The sun climbed higher over Fort Benning. The range echoed with rifle fire, students learning the craft, teachers passing forward what they had earned. Harper Kincaid stood watch, making sure the next generation was ready, making sure that when they faced their own impossible moments, they would have the skills and judgment to survive, making sure that precision and patience defined every engagement. For her father, for Bishop, for Tyler and Morrison, and everyone who had held the line before, the legacy of reckoning continued.